What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. You join me on this rainy February afternoon. I've just finished work, but I have just picked up some bits for my Mk2 Escort. Now, I dropped some parts off to the powder coaters and shot blasters a couple of months ago for the Escort, and I've just picked them up today. So as I say, I've picked these bits up today from the powder coaters. We've got plenty of bits in here that are all wrapped up, and I do have the rear axle. So let me get these bits inside and I'll show you what I've got. Here is the good stuff. So what I believe we've got here is two backing plates. And they have been shot blasted and powder coated. I will put some before and after photos on as well. I think this is where the leaf springs sit. There's like a bracket and then the shock absorbers go into them. But we're going to unbox all of this anyway. And I've got loads of little odds and sods, which we'll work out what they are in a second. I mean, he's even done some washers for me. I can't even remember where they come from yet, but we will find them a home because there's no bolt left on this project where I don't know where it goes. I'm not one of them mechanics. And we've also got my little anti-roll bar, which a lot of people commented about getting rid of or whatever, but I'm going to stick with the standard anti-roll bar on my Escort. All the parts are now unpackaged, and you can see my anti-roll bar. Now, if we take a closer look, you can see that the threads are nice and clean. The nuts have even been powder coated, but the thread is clean, so very happy with that. The powder coater took the attention to detail and didn't just powder coat all over the threads and leave me to clean them up. Now, we've also got the backing plates. These are amazing. They look so good. Now, there is some pitting on them, but really not too much at all, and I'm just so happy with how these have came out. They both look very presentable now, and certainly a big improvement. Look at them. Brand new. Can't beat that. Now, the next part is where the leaf spring sits and the shock bolts onto. I'm not quite sure the name of these. They must have a name. But yeah, these look very nice as well. Obviously, these are pitted as well, but really nothing to worry about. They're powder coated now and protected. So yeah, very happy with them. Now, the only downside with these is that the thread was not protected and it has been powder coated. So unfortunately, I will have to clean that up myself, but really nothing to worry about. I'm just so happy to see them powder coated. We've also got some of the brackets for the anti-roll bar bushes. They're all nice and neat and clean. It's just so satisfying looking at these. Yeah, they've actually come out really well. We've also got some other bits and bobs that attach to the anti-roll bar. I believe this is actually a exhaust hook. Sort of the rubber goes on there, so exhaust hanger. And then we've got some washers as well, which have been powder coated too. The last part that I got blasted and powder coated is my rear axle, the biggest part out of the lot, and I'm so happy with how this has came out. So let's just flip it around and show you guys. Really happy. Look at that, still got the lugs on there for the brake pipes to go through, and yeah, I'm just so happy with this. Really impressed by the finish. And the reason this took slightly longer to sort of get powder coated and get done is because the powder coater actually made up this blanking plate. So he made that up, and that ensured that there was no powder coat or no paint going to get inside and then affect me down the line. So yeah, he made a real good, neat job of that, and he's obviously put something over these nuts and threads because they haven't been powder coated. It would be fair to say that I'm very happy with how these rear axle parts look. It's very satisfying to see them now, knowing that they've been fully blasted and they've been powder coated to protect them for years to come. Now these parts are back, my next mission is to create a list of new parts that I need to purchase. So I've got things such as the handbrake cables, new shock absorbers, new leaf springs, and the list just goes on and on. So I need to create that, have a look online, see what I can buy brand new, and then I can start to rebuild this axle. I've gone ahead and I've written out a brief list of the new parts that I think I'm going to need for the axle rebuild on my Mk2 Escort. And what I've done is I got all the bits and bobs together on a order at Burton Power, and I've actually got this one delivered to my door. Normally I like to pop down there and say hello to the boys, but I just didn't really have much time spare, so yeah, I've got this delivered, and in this box is loads of new parts for the rear axle. I'm just going to give you a brief rundown of what I've ordered. So first out of the box is these rear spring shackle hangers. Now these bolt onto the back of the leaf springs, and yeah, there's 2 new ones from Burton Power there. Now next up we've got these first line brake cables. So these are the handbrake cables for my Mk2 Escort. As I say, where I can buy a brand new part, I will, because I'm not trying to get a genuine Ford new old stock handbrake cable. I'm more than happy to get a reproduction one. Now we have some goodies in here. So let's start off with these Gaz shocks. I've got Gaz fully adjustable coilovers at the front, so it would be rude not to pair them up with a set of shocks at the rear as well. Now these are just dampening adjustable. Obviously it's just a shock absorber, it's not like a Mk2 strut like you find at the front suspension on most vehicles. These are just the shock absorbers, and obviously you have leaf springs at the back as well. So yeah, these are brand new. Look at these puppies. So yeah, you can adjust the dampening on this little dial, and yeah, there they are. These were quite reasonably priced as well. They come with both of the top bushes ready to mount to the car. And yes, I do have 2 of these. There's another one hidden under this section of the box. The next part that I ordered were these Greyston lowering blocks. Now what I've done is I've gone for some 2-inch lowering blocks. I've done a bit of market research and asked people on the Escort page on Facebook if they could show pictures of how their Escorts sit and their suspension setup, and I found that 2-inch looks decent enough for me. I don't want it completely slammed to the floor, but obviously I do want it lower than the stock ride height. So in here, the kit, we've got the 2-inch lowering blocks, and we've also got 4 new U-bolts and the nuts to suit. All of the parts which are left are to do with the braking setup on the rear axle. So we've got some rear shoes down here, although I didn't realise that I ordered 2 boxes of rear shoes, and I was only meant to order 1 because there's actually 4 brake shoes in each box, but I can always send one back to Burton Power. They weren't too much anyway. I've also got new spring kits for both sides, and I do also have 2 new brake wheel cylinders, one that I've just opened up to show you guys, and another one in its box. But all of this stuff would be replaced when you're overhauling the rear axle anyway, but I knew I was going to get brand new stuff. I was just very happy to get some fresh springs, because when you put all the brake setup together, it just looks even better with some new shiny springs in there. I did go along and order a couple of bits from eBay as well. So I've got a bolt kit. Now this isn't all of the bolts for the rear axle, but in here we have all of the diff bolts, and we do also have the bolts where the half shafts go into the axle. You can see my ones have been painted black by the powder coaters, but I will be changing them to the fresh bolts that I have just purchased. I did also purchase these from eBay. Now these attach onto the backing plate, and the handbrake setup goes through them. It will make a lot more sense when I come to fit them later on in this video. Now although I've purchased quite a few new parts for the rear axle, I still do have a small shopping list to get through. Now, some of the big parts on there includes the rear leaf springs, because I haven't decided what ones I want to go for yet. I'm still toying and scratching my head a little bit with that. So if some of you guys could help, maybe throw some suggestions in the comment section below, that would really be useful. And something that I couldn't purchase from Burton Power is the rear drums. Now, I believe that I have 8-inch rear drums on the back, and they can't get hold of them at the moment, so I'm currently looking for a new set of them. I mean, I could always upgrade to 9-inch drums, but I've just bought all of the brake shoes and the kit for 8-inch, so it'd be a shame to have to send all that back and go through the rigmarole of that. So yeah, hopefully we'll sort something out and I can track down a set of 8-inch rear drums. But to be honest with you guys, I don't think there's too much left to buy. Apart from the leaf springs and the rear drums, I think I'm pretty much there. I am using the same rear diff, and I will talk about that further in detail in this video. But yeah, got the half shafts, I'm reusing them as well. So there's not really too much left to do apart from start to rebuild my axle. The first thing I'm going to be focusing on is getting this plate off. So this was actually laser cut by the blasting and powder coating team. So they got this cut up for me so no powder coat went inside of the axle. The bloke recommended that I whiz all of these nuts off and then go around it with a knife and just cut away at it, and then hopefully we should get this plate off, because that's going to be stuck quite tightly on there, because the powder coat has got in where the plate meets the surface of the axle. But we'll tackle that now and see how stuck on that is. That was a lot easier than I was expecting. Perfect. Since I removed that plate, I just started to clean up the surface where basically the diff meets onto the axle, and I made sure this is all nice and clean, because it doesn't matter if you've got a new gasket or a new seal, if the surface is got rubbish on it, it's never gonna seal, is it? So yeah, I've cleaned all that up and I've given the inside of the axle a real good wipe over and clean. There was a little bit of debris in there. I've given that quite a few rinses with brake cleaner, and I'm really happy that it's nice and clean now, so I can put my new gasket on. This actually just arrived yesterday, so I was really happy because it's sort of the first stage of the axle rebuild, and without this I would have been a little bit stuck. So yeah, we're just going to make sure we get that on without tearing or ripping that. The gasket is all now fully seated, and I can move on to looking at my rear diff. Now, in one of my last Mk2 Escort videos, albeit it was quite a bit of time ago now, I think it's about 5 months ago, I removed the diff and I stripped off the rear axle, and I didn't know how to calculate the diff ratio, as I've never done this before. I'm always honest with you guys, and that is the truth. I've never calculated a rear diff because this is my first Mk2 Escort. I've never had to mess around with diff ratios, and at work, if we get a rear wheel drive in with the diff gone, we just replace and refit, unfortunately. It's just the way of life these days. You barely take a diff out to strip it down to replace a part. It's unfortunately remove and refit. However, in the comment section of that video, I did receive lots of helpful guidance from you guys, including Neil, who has talked me through working out the diff ratio. Now, working out the diff ratio is very simple. All you have to do is count the teeth on the larger crown wheel, which is this section here, and then you have to divide it by the teeth on the smaller pinion, and that is just down there. So to make my life easier, I marked the pinion and the crown wheel. You can see the pinion mark just down there with some Tipp-Ex. I'm fairly certain someone else actually recommended doing this. And then I went ahead and I counted the teeth until I got back to the mark. Now, what I ended up with is, I've got it on my little bit of cardboard here. The crown wheel has 35 teeth and the pinion wheel has 9. And when you divide 35 by 9, you end up with 3.88. or 3.89. Now, with this bit of information, I went back to Neil's comment and I could see that he has written that a 389 diff ratio relays back to a 1300, and he said that's a good all-rounder. Now, this makes perfect sense because my Escort would have originally had a 1.3 crossflow engine in it, so that means this is the original diff, or it's the original diff it would have came with. It might have been changed, who knows. But yeah, this is the diff that should have came with the car anyway. And when I go on to read further on his comment, he says that he's running the same setup as me, so I can only assume he's got a Pinto in the bay, and he says that he's got a plated LSD as well, which I'm not going to be fitting into mine, but I could definitely upgrade mine in the future. He goes on to say that he would not recommend welding a diff, which I'm never going to do anyway. I'm just not that type of person. But he does say with his plated LSD in his 389 diff, he says it cruises nicely and still will get the back out with a few revs, and that is all I'm looking for, really. Just before we go any further, I just wanted to thank Neil once again and anyone else that commented on that video, because yeah, you've really helped me out work out what diff I've got on my Mk2 Escort. Now, as I say, I'm not going to be adding a plated LSD just yet. I can always add one in the future. And when I look over all of the wheels, they're all in good condition. They haven't got any scoring, they haven't got any chunks taken out of them, and I'm happy to run this for now. So the plan of action now is I'm going to clean up all the surface, which is going to mate onto the axle, because this needs to be just as clean as the section that I cleaned up a minute ago. And then I'm going to get it bolted on with the new nuts, and I think I'm going to give it a lick of paint, because this obviously hasn't been to the sandblasters and powder coaters. I was just about to fit the diff, and I actually did, but then I decided I want to paint it before I actually fit it, because once it's bolted on, I'm going to have to avoid all the nuts and stuff like that, so it'll drive me crazy. So I'm going to paint this, and then we'll get it onto the axle. Just a brief little update, I have been cracking on, and I've managed to clean up the diff. It's not perfect, but it's definitely better than it was, and I've also got a resting on my old leaf springs. I was scratching my head, figuring out how I was going to position this so I could paint it all in one. I actually found some red oxide, so I thought it'd be best if I gave the diff a coat of that first. So I've just given that a thick coat of red oxide. I've got the fan heater on, and that's just warming it up nicely. Should speed up it drying, because I do want to get some black on that today. Anyway, just on a little bit of a side quest now. The radio in the garage has stopped working, and it hasn't been working for a couple of months now. It's this old thing. But yeah, as I say, it gave up the ghost. It don't want to play tapes. It don't want to play CDs, which is a shame, because we've got loads of tapes. There's plenty back here as well behind my torch. And we also have loads of CDs down here. So what I decided to do the other day is I went on eBay and I went on a hunt for a retro CD player or radio, and I actually think I've found the same make that we had before this JVC one. Here it is. So it's a little, I believe you call it Sanyo radio, and down the bottom we've got the tape player, then we've got the CD up the top, and it's also got aux, and you can obviously play your usual radio stations off it. But what a cool little thing. I don't know how old it is. It's probably not too old, maybe about 15 years old, I'd probably guess, maybe 20, but it's still in full working order, as the eBay listing showed, because a bloke put a nice video of it up. So yeah, really happy to have this. I've got 2 speakers as well, all in immaculate condition. However, we've still got the same speakers up here, one there and one over there, so I'm not going to change them around. I'm just going to change the radio. So I'm just going to have a little bit of a side quest whilst the paint dries. I'm just going to sort this stuff out a little bit more. I'm going to get rid of this old radio and get the new one plumbed in, and hopefully we can get some tunes on. I've now installed the new radio, and it's working perfectly. This was a bit of a bargain, I think, £45 off eBay, but as I say, it plays tapes, plays CDs, and I've got the normal radio playing at the moment. Got all the CDs and some tapes here as well, and I've just managed to clean up this section of the garage. It's always nice working in a clean environment. I feel like I really do thrive when everything is clean. In the meantime, whilst I've been playing around with the new radio, I have given the Diff its first coat of black hammerite. Now I will need to give it another one, because we're going on top of that red oxide, and you can still see a bit of the orange colour underneath. Whilst the diff is actually drying, I'm now focusing on these Halfshafts. So I'm using the same ones that came in the axle, because they're perfectly fine. The bearings are nice and smooth as well. But I do need to sort out the studs. So on this near side one, you can see that the longer studs have been installed, but they haven't been tapped home. There's still quite a bit of a gap at the back of these, and I think, well, 1 or 2 of them are actually still loose, so they need to be smashed home. But on the offside, it's still got the short studs, and I have 4 new ones down here that I need to replace them with. I've just been working out what side these backing plates actually suit, but I did take lots of pictures before I stripped these apart, and I can now say that this one is definitely the off sides and the one on the floor over there is for the near sides. And I was also just fiddling about with how these sit, but I've had it around in all the different angles and they only match up with all 4 holes in one location, so they all definitely sit like that. What I've got to do now is attempt to juggle a little bit. I've got to hold the backing plate in one hand but also push the half shaft in. It looks like the powder coat is a little bit too thick on the backing plate because I can't get the bearing through it, so I'm just going to remove it and just run the wire wheel over that for a second. I've literally just taken a little bit off the insides. It's sometimes what you have to do when you get parts powder coated. There you go. The backing plate and the half shaft mounting point are all now lined up. The same story with this, it can only go one way, so you're not going to get it mixed up. And I have got my brand new bolts, which I'm now just going to go ahead and fit. Both of the backing plates and the half shafts are now completely in and done up with them new bolts. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to focus on this offside because I've basically shoved the axle over quite a bit, so I've got a bit more room to work here because we've now got to build up the brakes. I believe I've got all of the parts here to build up the rear brakes, and the first thing that I'm going to fit is the rear brake cylinders. Now I didn't actually have any bolts for these, so I've just shortened some down. I've got these little hex bolts, shorten them down to fit, and I'm going to put a washer behind all of them as well. There's 2 of them per cylinder. Luckily the cylinders aren't sided either, so it doesn't matter what side you put them on. Whilst I'm at the back of these plates, I'm just going to put these handbrake gaiters on. I believe these just protect any dirt or rubbish from going into the back of this plate and into the drum. Now they do look quite small, but I've already managed to squeeze on the other side, so you do have to just stretch them on quite a bit. I'll try and do it on camera for you guys, but it is a bit of a stretch, but it's, well, without sounding stupid, it's quite stretchy rubber. It's got a bit of play in it. Yes, there we go, that's much better. And of course, everything that I'm doing to the offside, I'm also doing to the near side as well. What I'm doing now is I'm starting to lay out the new shoes and the spring kit. Now I do this usually when I'm rebuilding shoes, just so you don't get confused. You want to know where all the springs go, and I've actually still got the old brake shoes. I didn't throw these away because I'm referring off of them, and I'm also referring off pictures that I took on my phone. It's just always good to have loads of different angles and keep the old parts so you know where the new parts sit. The only part that I'm keeping from the old one is this adjusting system. So this bit adjusts the shoes up, and this bit is the handbrake. So obviously when you operate the handbrake, it puts the shoes on. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean this all up, and then we can get it transferred across, work out what other new springs that we need, because we do have quite a few down here, and then we can get to fitting it all up onto the backing plate. I'm nearly ready to start fitting the rear brake shoes. Now I did clean up this adjuster and it's all nice and free now. This handbrake lever was actually quite stiff before, but that's nice and loose, and so is the adjuster, that's nice and free. Now all I've done with this is just squirted on some G101 from AutoSmart, which is a multi-purpose cleaner, but I had quite a strong solution of it, so yeah, come up really well, and yeah, more than happy to be fitting that to the rear shoes now. I've just gone ahead and I've slotted in the adjuster. I had to take off the rubber at the back just because it was a bit too tight. But just before I go ahead and fit these shoes, just wanted to show you guys that I actually had one of these round the wrong way. It was actually a different shoe that I needed, so just pay attention to the gaps This one's got a gap at the bottom, but then this one's got a gap at the top. It's all to do with the leading and the trailing shoe. But yeah, just marrying them up with the old ones before, just to double check you've got the right shoes. And I've just done that, and these are the right ones for this side. You might be able to see that I've just put a tiny little dab of copper grease on all the little contact points. Now this isn't a necessity when rebuilding the shoes, but I always like to put a little dab on there. Not too much, literally just a tiny little dab of copper grease. It's a fiddly task, but I've now got to put the shoes on. And I've made that look quite easy, but what I now need to do is I need to get the little springs in, so I'll probably do one side at a time. So all I'm doing for these is you get the pin, and you just put it in the back. And that'll marry up with the first hole that you have on the brake shoe. You can see that popping out now. And I've got the little cup, the little ends on my mole grips. And then you've just got to push it on like so with the spring. It can be very fiddly. There we go. And that is completely on. You just have to twist it 90 degrees. That's the first little springs in with the pin and the little cup that I was talking about. See, I've got this side in as well. It's all lined up with the top cylinder up here. They're all in the grooves. And also both of the shoes are attached and in the bottom of this backing plate. It's at this point that I like to bring out my ratchet strap. And all I do is I just ratchet the shoes up a little bit just to take the slack up. Now this just helps me put on the springs, because we've got a long one that goes all the way along the top, one that goes along the bottom, and we've got one that goes from here. It's already actually in there because I've just managed to slot it in, and it also attaches onto that adjuster. Now bringing everything just closer together just makes it that little bit easier, and hopefully we won't be struggling as much. We're going to go ahead and fit this top one first, and we've got to get it in this furthest hole that looks a bit oblong, and it also joins just up there as well. I'll pretend that was my first try. This spring here has been a right pain in the arse, this one. So just gonna go ahead and do the bottom one. This lower one that holds the shoes together. I've only got to get it to that first little hole, so I'll do that and then I'll go back onto the tricky one. That was certainly quite a lot of effort, but the bottom spring is now in. All I've got left to do now is this spring that connects from here onto the adjuster, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be a pain because I've already been trying this one. Right, I've finally finished putting on them 3 springs. So the top one was pretty easy. The bottom one, which you can't actually see at the moment, was the worst. That was a pain in the arse. And the third one is this small one just up here. Now I couldn't get to it with my mole grips, so what I'd done is I slotted in this side first, and then I got my little pick here and I pulled it, and I managed to pull it and push it up, and then I finished it off with a screwdriver. I just gave it a little tap, and that went in lovely. So yeah, it's all about getting the right tool for the job, and these rear brakes can be quite fiddly. I've made a bit of a mess whilst I've been assembling this side, so what I'm going to do, have a quick tidy up, and I'm going to go over to this side and just get all of the shoes together with the springs on, and then I can catch up with you guys. And that is the near side braking system all done up. You've got the shoes in there, the springs, and I have also just cleaned up the surface of that half shaft, ready for a wheel to go on. Went really smoothly, to be fair. Top spring, nice and easy. The bottom one took a few goes, and then that middle one took a few goes again, but using different techniques, I managed to get it all blitzed and finished off. It would have been great now to put some drums on just to finish off the axle, but as I said, I couldn't actually get any from Burton Power as they currently don't have any. But take a look at that. We've got the handbrake levers out the back, and you've also got the new cylinders. So yeah, I'm going to have to stay on the hunt for a set of 8-inch rear drums, but hopefully some of you guys might have a handy link that you could whack in the comments if you know of any suppliers. I have also just touched up a couple of bits on the diff that I wasn't too happy with, because this morning when I was cleaning up the surface I did catch a few bits and sort of went down to the red oxide again, so I put another little coat over that, and yeah, it looks brilliant I think. So that's some great progress, but we do have a few more bits to add to the rear axle, including the anti-roll bar, which the mounting points are there, and I've had that powder coated as well, just haven't managed to get it fitted in this video. I've also got to make up some hard brake lines. There's some hard brake lines that go to each side. I've also got to add the handbrake cable, and it's got like a rod set up, so yeah, we're going to be doing that all in the next video. And then it will be nearly time to mount it back onto the Escort, but I do need to figure out what leaf springs to go for. I was hoping that some of you guys could help me out with leaf spring suggestions. I've seen quite a few online, and yeah, I think I know what leaf spring I want to go for, but just put it in the comments your recommendations. I don't want this Escort completely slammed to the floor to the point where I hate driving it, but I also don't want it jacked up at the back like a monster truck. So yeah, just want a nice ride height. But to be fair, once I've got the leaf springs and I've purchased the drums, this axle will nearly be done. I just need to put a few more hours in to do the brake lines and handbrake cable setup, and then we're pretty much there. So I feel this has been a really successful Escort video. I'm just going to be chipping away at it. As you guys probably know, I've sold a couple of my other vehicles. They weren't really project cars, but at the same time, they always needed fixing, and I was always making content on them. So just going to keep chipping away at the Escort. I've got no deadline for it. Obviously, we'd love to get it done for summer, but who knows? We will just keep chipping away, and I'm going to be dedicating a lot more time to the Escort. Anyway, I think that is all. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like, and if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel to see more. Thank you all for watching, and until the next one, I'll see you guys later.